put out this Diddy doc, and Marlon was asked about this Diddy doc on, what is this, 92.3, okay, in LA, and they asked him, did he watch it? And he said he was Diddy'd out. Let that, pretty much saying, yo, that man is already doing time, and he said 50 Cent got to be careful because, you know, he gonna get his karma. Something to that effect. What you got to say about that?
F you, the boat you ride on, anybody look like you got your last name and rode on that boat with you. You feel me?
Correct.
I'm picking a side, bro. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
I'm picking a side. I'm not giving no dude, you understand, that I'm against a chance to ever do anything against me again. I'm not giving him, he don't got no side, bro. You know, anybody on his side is against me.
The internet froze the second the words hit the timeline because this did not sound like promotion or playful trolling. This sounded like a warning. When 50 Cent said, "They're after me," people stopped laughing and started screenshotting. That sentence does not live in the casual category. That sentence lives in the same room as paranoia, power, and problems. For years, hip-hop beefs have come and gone like seasonal fashion trends, but this felt different. This was not a diss track rollout or a meme-ready jab. This sounded like a man who had seen something he was not supposed to see. And when his name got connected to a documentary circling Sean Combs, the temperature went nuclear. This stopped being entertainment and started feeling dangerous. Because let's be honest, when 50 Cent jokes, you laugh. When he warns, you listen. The tone shifted from sarcastic captions to serious speculation overnight. Fans started asking what footage exists, who's nervous, and why this suddenly feels like a door got kicked open behind the scenes. This makes the Kardashians look boring, and that's saying something. And once the internet smelled fear mixed with power, it leaned in hard. Posts multiplied, reactions exploded, and whispers turned into full-blown theories. Because in hip-hop, when someone sounds the alarm, history says it's never for nothing. The moment the warning hit the internet, it did not feel accidental. It felt deliberate, measured, and heavy with implication. When 50 Cent said, "They're after me," people stopped treating it like banter. That sentence landed like a flare shot into the night sky. It was not a joke looking for laughs. It was a signal looking for witnesses. For years, audiences have learned how to read his tone. When he trolls, it's playful and sharp. When he clowns, it's loud and theatrical. This time, the energy felt colder and more focused. The words carried the weight of someone who had already connected dots. That difference mattered, and the internet noticed immediately. The timing raised eyebrows before details ever did. A documentary orbiting Sean Combs had been floating in whispers, rumors, and leaks. Not the polished kind of project that comes with red carpets and press tours, but the kind that lives in hushed conversations. The kind people warn you about instead of promoting. Suddenly, the alarm made sense. Speculation filled the gap where information should have been. People started asking what footage exists and who might be exposed. Others wondered why a veteran with decades in the game would sound concerned now. Theories bloomed faster than facts because uncertainty feeds curiosity. When power and secrecy intersect, imagination does the rest. The background tension was already there long before the warning. Industry conversations about accountability had been simmering for years. Old stories resurfaced in new contexts, and past alliances were re-examined. Nothing felt settled, only delayed. The documentary talk felt like a spark landing on dry ground. Early reactions split sharply along familiar lines. Supporters treated the warning as proof of courage, reading it as someone refusing to be silenced. Skeptics rolled their eyes and accused him of theatrics. Neutral observers watched quietly, knowing escalation was inevitable. The internet rarely allows ambiguity to survive. Social media timelines became investigative boards overnight. Screenshots were reposted, captions dissected, and wording analyzed like coded messages. People debated whether the warning referred to legal pressure, industry retaliation, or something darker. Each interpretation gained its own mini-following. Certainty became a matter of preference rather than proof, the sarcasm that usually surrounds. Celebrity drama felt muted at first. Jokes existed, but they landed awkwardly. Even meme pages hesitated, sensing that this might not be safe to trivialize yet. When humor pauses, tension fills the space. That pause said everything. Industry history added weight to the conversation. Hip-hop has never been gentle with whistleblowers or disruptors. Speaking openly about powerful figures has consequences, documented and whispered alike. Fans remembered past cases where warnings came true too late. Memory sharpened fear. Commentators rushed to contextualize the moment. Some framed it as strategic messaging meant to control the narrative. Others argued it was a preemptive defense against smear campaigns. Both interpretations assumed intention and intelligence. Nobody treated it as random. The documentary itself became a shadowy presence in the story. No one could agree on its scope, creators, or contents. That uncertainty only amplified anxiety. When people do not know what is coming, they imagine the worst. Silence around details acted like gasoline. The first wave of media coverage danced carefully. Headlines quoted the warning but avoided conclusions. Language stayed cautious, almost nervous. This was not a situation outlets wanted to misstep on. The tone suggested awareness without confirmation. Fans began revisiting old interviews, lyrics, and feuds for clues. Past jokes were reinterpreted as foreshadowing. Casual comments suddenly felt loaded. The internet loves retroactive meaning. History gets rewritten in real time. Critics pushed back hard against what they saw as fear-mongering. They accused him of inflating drama to stay relevant. The argument ignored context and history. It assumed equal footing where none exists. Power dynamics matter, and people know it. The warning also changed how people discussed the documentary itself. What had been abstract suddenly felt imminent. Curiosity shifted into anticipation. People wanted to know who would be named and what would be shown. Attention intensified without any new information. As speculation grew, the sense of threat became part of the narrative. People debated whether they meant individuals, institutions, or systems. Each option carried its own implications. Ambiguity allowed every fear to coexist. Vagueness can be powerful when used intentionally. Behind the scenes, silence from other industry figures spoke loudly. Some stayed completely quiet, avoiding the topic altogether. Others offered vague support without naming names. That restraint fueled more questions than answers. Silence became suspicious by default. The situation also highlighted how quickly perception can shift. One sentence reframed an entire conversation. What had been gossip transformed into concern. Entertainment tilted toward unease. The mood change was subtle but undeniable. This phase was defined by anticipation rather than action. No footage leaked, no statements clarified, and no confirmations arrived. The tension lived in waiting. Waiting is where stories grow teeth. Every hour without updates sharpened anxiety. Online debates grew more intense as people filled the void. Some framed the warning as an act of protection, others as provocation. Both sides assumed strategy. Nobody believed it was accidental. Intent was taken as a given. The narrative momentum became self-sustaining. Even without new information, discussion continued. Each post referenced the last, creating a loop of speculation. Attention fed itself. The story no longer needed facts to survive. By the end of this phase, the warning had achieved something crucial. It shifted power in the conversation. The focus moved from rumor to risk, from curiosity to caution. That shift ensured escalation was coming, because once fear enters the frame, reactions multiply. Allies feel pressure to choose sides. Opponents feel exposed. Observers feel compelled to comment. The warning did not end a story. It started one. And with anticipation peaking and silence holding, the stage was set. The next developments would not arrive quietly. They never do when power feels threatened. Once the warning settled into public consciousness, the internet did what it always does when fear mixes with celebrity power. It escalated everything. Quiet curiosity turned into loud speculation almost overnight. People stopped asking if something was coming and started arguing about how bad it would be. That shift alone told you this was no longer entertainment. It was anticipation. The documentary rumors began mutating in real time. What was once described as industry insight suddenly became career-ending footage depending on who was tweeting. Every anonymous post felt like a breadcrumb. Every vague caption sounded like a confession. The lack of concrete details made everything feel bigger, darker, and more dangerous than reality might ever be. Memes eventually broke the tension, but not in the usual carefree way. These were nervous jokes, the kind people make when they are laughing to avoid thinking too hard. Comparisons flew everywhere. Some said this felt like watching the trailer to a true crime documentary before the bodies are mentioned. Others joked that this was hip-hop's version of a political thriller. Except nobody knows who survives the final scene. Celebrity reactions poured fuel on the situation, even when they tried not to. A few artists posted cryptic messages about truth coming out without naming names. Others shared old clips or quotes that suddenly felt intentional. Even motivational posts were read as subtle commentary. In moments like this, neutrality does not exist. Silence from major industry figures became its own storyline. People started keeping mental lists of who had not spoken. Screenshots circulated labeling silence as loyalty or fear. The internet loves assigning motives where none are confirmed. When power is involved, everyone becomes a detective. Public outrage split into layers instead of sides. Some people were angry at the idea of hidden wrongdoing finally surfacing. Others were angry at the idea of reputations being attacked without proof. A third group was simply angry because chaos had arrived late, and they were ready for it. Outrage does not need consistency, only momentum. Sarcasm sharpened as the conversation grew louder. People joke that every old interview now sounded like foreshadowing. Lines that once felt playful were suddenly treated like coded warnings. The internet rewrites tone based on outcomes it has not even seen yet. Hindsight became predictive rather than reflective. The comparisons kept getting wilder. Some likened the situation to corporate whistleblower scandals, except with platinum records and decades of influence. Others said it felt like watching the music industry sweat the way politicians do during leaks. Hyperbole ruled the day. Drama thrives on exaggeration, and this story had endless fuel. Fans of 50 Cent rallied quickly, framing the warning as self-defense. They argued that someone with his history does not sound alarms for attention. Past beefs, business moves, and survival instincts were cited like credentials. To them, this was experience speaking, not paranoia. Critics pushed back just as aggressively. They accused him of playing chess with public perception, using fear to control the narrative. Some claimed this was calculated hype meant to keep eyes on the project. That argument ignored one key detail. Fear is not a cheap emotion to perform convincingly. The memes evolved as tension lingered. Jokes turned into countdowns. People speculated about release dates, leaks, and next statements. Humor became a way to pass time while waiting for the other shoe to drop. The waiting itself became content. Media coverage leaned into the uncertainty rather than clarifying it. Articles asked questions instead of answering them. Headlines teased danger without specifics. That approach kept readers hooked while avoiding responsibility. Ambiguity proved profitable. The documentary, still unseen, became larger than itself. It transformed into a symbol rather than a project. To some, it represented accountability. To others, it represented threat. The lack of imagery allowed imagination to fill in gaps with worst-case scenarios. Online, debates spiraled into broader discussions about power in the industry. Names beyond the immediate circle started getting mentioned. Old rumors resurfaced, dusted off and repackaged. Suddenly, this story felt like it could touch everything. Expansion is inevitable once curiosity outgrows its original subject. The public reaction began to mirror disaster psychology. Some people prepared emotionally for exposure. Others dismissed everything as noise to avoid disappointment. The spectrum of belief widened instead of narrowing. Agreement moved further away with every post. Supporters grew more defensive as skepticism increased. Defending someone publicly creates emotional investment. The more criticism appeared, the louder defenses became. Comment sections turned into loyalty tests rather than discussions. At the same time, some critics softened their tone, acknowledging the seriousness even if they doubted the framing. The possibility that something real could surface forced caution. Jokes slowed. Certainty cracked. The escalation revealed something important about internet culture. People are addicted to the moment before truth arrives. The anticipation is often more thrilling than the revelation. Suspense keeps engagement high. Resolution ends it. This phase of the story thrived on expectation rather than evidence. Every post fed the sense that something was imminent. People stayed glued to their screens waiting for confirmation that never came. The absence of updates became the loudest update of all. As days passed, tension refused to release. Instead of fading, it matured into something heavier. Conversation slowed but deepened. The situation felt less like gossip and more like risk management. By the end of this stage, one thing was clear. The warning had succeeded in changing behavior. People were watching what they said, how they said it, and whether they said anything at all. Fear does not need proof to influence action, and once behavior changes, consequences are already in motion. Because escalation is not just about noise. It is about impact. The next phase would not be loud memes or frantic speculation. It would be fallout. When the noise finally began to thin, the consequences did not fade with it. Loud speculation gave way to quiet recalculation, and that shift mattered more than any trending hashtag. The internet stopped yelling and started watching. In moments like this, silence is not peace, it is strategy. Everyone involved understood that something had changed. For 50 Cent, the warning reshaped how people interpreted his every move. Statements that once felt sarcastic now carried edge. Jokes were no longer dismissed as trolling. His words were weighed, paused on, and reread like subtext. The perception of threat lingered even without confirmation. Public opinion fractured in a way that does not easily heal. Supporters viewed him as someone protecting himself before forces closed in. Critics saw manipulation wrapped in fear. Both sides hardened instead of softening. Once people choose an interpretation, they defend it aggressively. Ambiguity does not create compromise, it creates camps. The ripple effects stretched far beyond one person. Conversations around Sean Combs shifted noticeably, even without new information. Old praise grew quieter, and neutral commentary turned cautious. When power becomes part of a warning, people adjust instinctively. Reputation is fragile when scrutiny increases. Industry relationships felt the pressure almost immediately. Associations that once seemed casual suddenly carried weight. Silence from collaborators was read as distancing. Support was analyzed for authenticity. In high-stakes moments, proximity becomes a statement whether intended or not. Behind the scenes, decisions were being made quietly. Projects get reassessed, messaging gets filtered, and risk calculations get updated without public acknowledgement. The entertainment industry rarely reacts loudly to uncertainty. It responds by closing doors softly. That kind of fallout never trends, but it lasts longer. The documentary itself became less important than its potential impact. What it might reveal mattered more than what it actually contained. Possibility outweighed proof. Fear does not require evidence to influence behavior. It only requires credibility. Media coverage reflected this shift. The tone moved from speculative excitement to measured caution. Headlines grew less dramatic but more deliberate. Writers stopped guessing and started contextualizing. When energy changes like that, it signals awareness rather than boredom. Fans noticed the difference too. Conversations slowed, and language became more careful. People avoided absolutes they once used confidently. The mood changed from anticipation to tension. Waiting became uncomfortable rather than exciting. Critics who once mocked the warning began reframing their arguments. Certainty softened into skepticism. Some admitted that even if exaggerated, the reaction it triggered was real. Influence does not depend on truth alone. It depends on belief. The aftermath exposed a deeper truth about power and exposure. When someone at the top signals vulnerability, it disrupts the hierarchy. Others reevaluate their positions instinctively. Fear moves faster than loyalty. That reality reshapes dynamics without announcements. Public memory began storing the moment as a reference point. Before the warning and after the warning became unspoken markers. Even without resolution, the narrative acquired permanence. Stories do not need endings to change tragectories. The situation also altered expectations for what might come next. People anticipated legal moves, counterstatements, or strategic silence. Every option carried implications. Action and inaction both felt risky. That pressure does not disappear quickly. Some supporters expressed disappointment that nothing definitive followed. Others saw the lack of escalation as proof that the warning worked. Deterrence is invisible by nature. You never know what did not happen because someone spoke up. Critics argued that without proof, fear should not dominate discourse. That argument ignored a key factor. Influence does not wait for confirmation. It operates on perception. And perception had already shifted. The internet eventually moved on, as it always does. New controversies demanded attention. But moving on does not erase impact. It simply buries it under newer noise. The warning remained stored, ready to resurface when convenient. What lingered was unease. The kind that does not trend but changes behavior. People spoke differently, joked less freely, and speculated more carefully. That subtle shift was the real aftermath. Not chaos but caution, the story never received a clean resolution. No dramatic reveal closed the loop. No clear villain or hero emerged. Instead, the situation settled into ambiguity. Ambiguity is uncomfortable, but it is powerful. It leaves room for future escalation. This is how modern scandals evolve. They do not always explode. Sometimes they hover. They influence without announcing themselves. They exist in the background, shaping choices quietly, and that lingering uncertainty is the point. Because once fear enters the equation, certainty leaves. The warning did not end a conversation. It changed its tone permanently. Whatever comes next will be measured against this moment. Every future move will be read through the lens of risk. The alarm may have stopped ringing, but the echo remains. And in an industry built on power, perception, and silence. Echoes are never harmless. Now don't close this out pretending this was just another headline you'll forget by tomorrow. If this warning made you pause, rewind, or lean closer to the screen, that's because it wasn't casual. This wasn't entertainment dressed up as drama. This was tension leaking into public view. Moments like this don't scream, they whisper. And whispers are usually the ones worth listening to. So let's talk in the comments, because that's where the real pressure lives. Drop your take below and don't play it safe. Do you think this was a genuine warning or a calculated move to control the narrative? Do you believe power was threatened or was fear weaponized? Say it straight, because quiet opinions don't move conversations forward. And if this breakdown kept you locked in, smash that like button like it owes you money. Hit it the way the internet hits repost before checking facts. That one click tells the algorithm you want deeper dives, sharper breakdowns, and stories that don't tiptoe around uncomfortable territory. Likes are how this kind of content survives. If you want more investigations that follow the tension instead of the headlines, make sure you subscribe. Stories like this don't end cleanly, and the next twist always shows up when people stop paying attention. New scandals, quiet warnings, and loud fallout drop constantly. And you already know the internet never sleeps. Because today's warning becomes tomorrow's reference point. Silence does not mean safety, and calm does not mean resolved. Stay curious, stay alert, and stay questioning everything that looks too neat. Too neat.